Today we're going to learn a very essential method to use smart objects to create really complex composites and then simplify it. So without any further ado, let's get started. So here we are in Photoshop, and if you want to follow along using any of the photos used in the video, make sure to go ahead and check the links in the description. So here we have a picture of a model, and I have already extracted the subject and deleted the background. So have a look. So I have already done it. If you want to know how to do it, I have a dedicated video on how to extract hair and furry stuff like that. Check out the video right here. Let's go ahead and delete this layer with the background, and we have an image of the subject with the mask, everything cut out. Now let's introduce a new background. How would we do that? Let's go to the folder and figure out and find out a new background. Okay, let's use this one. Just click and drag it over the subject. Now let's adjust it. Let's make it a little bigger. And by the way, you can press Shift and Alt, Shift and Option if you're using a Mac, and then make it larger to make it larger from the center. Now let's make it a little larger than the canvas. There we go. Hit enter once you're satisfied with the position. Now bring the subject over the background. Otherwise you won't be able to see it. So just click and drag and drop it over the background. Now I don't quite like the position, and also we don't quite like the aspect ratio. Let's make it 16:9 to make it more wide. So press C to open up the crop tool, or you can also click here. Then you can choose 16:9. I have already chosen it. And then as always, you can hold Shift and Alt together and then make it larger, then drag it to make it larger from the center. Now, once it has reached the canvas borders, hit enter, and then you can always change the position of the model. Right now, as you can see, we have cropped a little extra. We have left some space here. So we would, with the crop tool selected, we would click again here and then hold the Shift and Alt and drag it a little bit in. Hit enter once we are satisfied. Now as you can see, there are no extra spaces. Now it's time for us to reposition the subject and the background. Let's zoom out, Control and minus, Command and minus if you're using a Mac. Zoom out a bit and select the background layer. And with the Move tool, the shortcut to which is V, okay, press V to open up the Move tool, select the Move tool, and then click and move it the way you like. And while you're moving it, you can hold the Shift key to move it straight. And Shift key is a very essential key while moving anything. You can move anything 45 degrees. If you hold the Shift key and try to move it 45 degrees, you can do that. Hold the Shift key, move it 90 degrees. You can move it 45 degrees. I guess you can do that. Yes. Just like that. And let's bring it back to its original position. Control Alt Z, Command Option Z if you're using a Mac. Z as you pronounce it in America. Okay, there we go. And select this one and bring it to the right. Hold the Shift key. Yep, that looks right. Now, to match the subject with the background, we have to introduce some curves, and maybe we will change some colors. Okay, so first of all, let's try to match the subject with the background. To do that, we need to focus on two things: highlights and shadows, and sometimes midtones, right? Have a look at the background. What is the color of the highlights? A little bit bluish, right? What is the color of shadows? It's also a little bluish, and the midtones are already bluish. So here's what we do. Create a curves adjustment layer. Click on this adjustment layer icon and choose curves. Now once you choose curves, let's bring it right here so that you can see what's happening. Okay, let's bring it out. Okay, now we need to match the subject. So we would go to blue. Okay, clicking on the drop down menu, we will choose blue. We need to increase the blues, so we would pick a point in the middle. We need to increase the overall blues. There we go, just like that. But here's the problem. The curves adjustment layer is applying all throughout the photo. We don't want that. We want this adjustment layer to be applicable just to this image, right? Just to the subject, not to the background. Remember, we are adjusting the subject to the background, not the background to the subject, right? And if we are adjusting just the subject to the background, we need to make sure that the effect is being applied just to the subject. And to do that, we can create a clipping mask. How to create a clipping mask? Now there are two ways to create a clipping mask. Hold the Alter option, click on the line between these two layers, and once you hover over two lines by holding the Alt or Option, this icon appears with square with a down arrow. Just click on that. This creates a clipping mask. Also, what you can do, let's go back, Control Alt Z. You can press this button to create a clipping mask. There you go. Now let's go back to the blue again and let's adjust it to fit the background. There we go, that looks right. Now as you can see, the background doesn't have any amount of red, and this has a lot of red. So we would go to red and try to reduce it just like that. Yes, now it's matching. There we go, now it's looking great. Now let's try going to green and increase or decrease it. Let's see how that works out. No, that's good. Let's come back to RGB and let's try to just darken it just a little bit. There we go, now it's matching. Maybe increase the highlights a bit. Let's close it. Now let's zoom out and let's see the difference between the composite before applying the curve and after applying the curve. So this is before the curve, this is after. Look how much matching this is. Now as you can see, the yellow is not matching so much. It's not looking nice with the background, and we need to make the color of our dress a little bit contrasty. It should contrast with the background for it to look good, right? So let's open up a plugin, or an extension in other words, called Adobe Color Themes. This is a very good extension, right? And have a look at the color wheel. What is the opposite color of green? In the background we have a lot of green, right? And also a little bit of blues. So what's the overall opposite color of greens and blues? Red, right? So we think red would look good on this. Maybe your choice is different. Whatever color your choice is, you can do that. Let's just minimize that, tuck it in, and create another adjustment layer, clicking on this, called Hue Saturation. And make sure this is also clipping. So click on this button, it's also clipping, and let's bring it below the curves, because first we want to change the color and then we want to apply the curves, because curves is already manipulating the colors, right? We want to manipulate the color first and then change the overall color to match that of the background. So first we need to change the color of the t-shirt. If we had applied this after curves, it might have worked, but for it to be more effective, we need to apply that first. Why? Because we have the pure color. Let's change that first and then change the overall color to match that of the background. Got it? Alright. Let's double click on this one to open up the properties. I guess single click will also do. No, double click. Alright, this opens up the properties, and then we need to change the yellow of her shirt or t-shirt, whatever she's wearing, to red. So let's choose yellow. These are all the targets. This is the target and this is the changes that we make to the target. Okay, let's choose yellows and decrease the hue or increase the hue all the way to the edge. Okay, just to see which areas are being affected. Then increase the saturation like crazy. This is just for indication purposes. Now we need to select exactly the yellows that are in her t-shirt or sweater. I don't know what she's wearing. Alright, I'm really poor when it comes to apparels and clothes and stuff. I don't even buy my own t-shirts. Sometimes my mom does it for me. I don't like going shopping for just shirts. If it's electronics, I would just run to the shop. Anyway, gadgets or stuff, I'm just crazy when it comes to that. Okay, so on the top bar, right? The top bar is the target. The bottom bar is the result. Okay. The top bar is the complete color spectrum of the image. And this is the area that we are targeting. Right now, as you can see, we are targeting the yellow areas, right? And as we have changed the hue, as you can see, we have increased it. Yellow has been changed to blue, but that yellow is not selected. So what we did, we need to narrow down the selection really well, and then holding from the center, grabbing from the center by pressing the mouse, you can drag it to left and right to see which areas are being affected and exactly stop on the areas where the t-shirt or the shirt is selected. T-shirt, I guess. There we go. This is a little bit of a good selection. Now let's expand this little by little. Not so much. This is okay. And now expand the outer slider. Think of it like increasing the fuzziness when you apply select color range, or think of it like this. the transition between area that is selected or targeted and the area that is not targeted. If you increase the gap between this slider and this slider, right, the rightmost slider and the second rightmost slider, the transition between area that is selected and the area that is not selected goes smoother. The more the gap increases, the more smoother the transition. So as you can see, this is the gap. If you increase the gap, the smoother the transition will be. Okay, this is fine. Now let's increase the innermost left slider and increase it a bit. Now it's touching the skin. We don't want that. Beware. Let's take it in. Yeah, that's fine. Now let's soften it all out. There we go. You want to select the whole of her sweater or t-shirt. All right. Now let's bring the hue to 0, saturation to 0. Now let's change the color by playing with the hues. So we love the reds. There we go. That red looks good. You can increase the saturation just a little bit. Maybe increase the lightness. No, I kind of like the normal lightness and the saturation just a little bit. There we go. Now, as you can see let's close this properties. Her headgear and her hair also had a little bit of yellow in it. It also has changed the color, but we just wanted to change the color of her t-shirt. So what do? We create a mask. Very simple. Select the mask of the hue saturation. Remember, adjustment layers already come with a mask. Okay, select the mask and paint it completely with black so that we can paint in white and bring back in the t-shirt, right? So to invert the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Because it's already completely white, we would just invert it. Ctrl or Command I. Now remember the concept of mask. What was the concept of mask? Black conceals, white reveals. Wherever there is black in the mask, that area of the layer or the adjustment layer won't be visible. Wherever there is white, that area will be visible. Now, as you can see, the mask is completely black. We cannot see any of the effect of hue saturation. Now, we can take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white. Remember, you can always press X to toggle between the foreground and the background color, and press D to reset the swatches. If in case you have selected some random color right here, you can press D to reset the swatches. And then slowly and gradually, let's make the brush a little smaller. Holding the Alter option, the right mouse button, dragging it to the left to make it smaller, dragging it up to make it softer. And then paint in here with slow and opacity 100. Just paint in here. There we go. And the color is changed. Isn't that wonderful? Now let's go ahead and blur out the background, right? To give it a nice depth of field. So what we would do, select the background, select the lake, and then Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Make sure this is a smart object. Since we dragged it in, it's already a smart object, but you need to make sure that this is a smart object. If it's not, what you need to do, let's cancel it right here. Right clicking on it and select Convert to Smart Objects if it's not a smart object. Okay. Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, or any kind of blur that you like. Your favorite blur. 31, 30-ish is fine. There we go. Once we're satisfied, hit OK. Now, as you can see, this is getting a little complex. And now if we add a little text here with lots of curves, hue, saturation effects, it's getting complex. Now it's time to show you the magic of smart objects. Now have a look. It's a little complex, right? The subject layer and the background. All you have to do, select all of these three, curves, hue, saturation, everything that has to do with the subject, by holding the Control or Command and clicking on all of these three. Make sure all of them are selected. Or what you can do, select the end layer of the subject and hold the Shift and select the topmost layer of the subject that's related to the subject. When you hold the Shift, this is important. Okay, if you want to select a series of layers, right, from layer B to say layer E, right, A, B, C, D, E. So all you have to do, select the B, hold the Shift and click on the E. Every layer between B, C, D and E will be selected, all of them. So that's Shift. But when you hold the Control, if you want to select B to E, here's what you have to do. Hold the Control, select the B, C, D and E one by one. So there's a difference. In case you want to select some layers which are not in straight series, then Control or Command is useful. Otherwise, Shift. Alright. Now right click on it and choose Convert to Smart Objects. But you might think, whoa, stop, Unmesh. Everything is gone. Hue saturation and those mask information, everything is gone. It's just the subject right here. Wait for it. You can also do it with this. Just make sure this is selected. Right click on it. See, if you select this layer, the smart filters are already selected. Just right click on it and choose Convert to Smart Objects. And then watch. It's just the background and the subject. And we are not merging it. Have a look. If you want everything back, just double click on the thumbnail and you'll get everything back, everything in a different document. If you want to make changes to it, just make changes and then it will update in the main document. So for example, if I wanted to change the color, so I would just double click on this, open up the properties and maybe change the hue, say to this one. This is a very bad color, but just for example, and close it and then File, Save. If you do that, let's come back to this one and let's see what happens. See, it updated. So every setting is still available. It's just simplifying these two layers. Let's get back to the reds. Okay, let's save it and then close it. All right, it's saving right now, 36%. There we go. Close it. It's looking fine. Now it's so simplified. You can name this subject. You can name this background or whatever, back G, and then apply maybe a curves adjustment layer to both of them to bring both of them together to blend them more better. All right, so let's just give some curves. All right, let's zoom in quite a bit and let's see how that looks. Increase the highlights just a little bit, decrease the shadows, and then give it a matte effect by taking the leftmost point up, just like that. Now it's looking very, very interesting. Just like this. Have a look, before, after, making it really interesting. I can change the canvas background to maybe black to, yeah, that's how it will look. Now you can add some text, right? You can create a text layer, clicking on the T, and you can just click in here. This creates a text layer. And let's increase the size to maybe 72. I guess this is Poland. I actually posted the background image on my Facebook yesterday, and as most people pointed out very correctly, this is some mountain in Poland. Let's name it Poland and let's make it bigger. Now let's place it right there. There we go. Hit enter once you're satisfied. Okay, just like that. And by the way, I think the gap between A and N is kind of less than N and D, and we need to make adjustments here and there. So double click on the T, just click on this once and hold the Alt and then the arrow keys to adjust the spaces. Okay, left arrow key to decrease it, right arrow key to increase it. There we go. There we go. And let's increase it a bit, let's decrease it a bit, let's decrease it a bit. Okay, now that looks nice. Now, if you're wondering how did I create the spaced out text, it was already done, but if you cannot do it, just double click on the T, make sure everything is selected, and then do the same thing. Hold the Alter option, the right arrow key to make it more spaced out, the left arrow key to compress it. Simple, right? So select the Move tool, and now let's add some other text just beneath it. So we would hold the Alter option, click on this, and then drag it, leave it, and then leave the Alter option. That creates a copy. Now you can type anything, just double click on the T to select all of it. We can type dream, discover, or maybe explore. I'm typing all of it, discover. Okay, select the Move tool, Control or Command T, and let's make it smaller from the center. Let's bring the center here. You cannot see the end. Let's zoom out quite a bit. And holding the Shift and Alt, Shift and Option if you're using a Mac, let's make it smaller. There we go. Now this is a huge image, and that's why it's lagging a little bit. Now once you're satisfied, hit Enter. There we go. And let's bring it beneath it, just like this. Control Command T. That looks nice. All right. Now you can also change the font, but I'm not changing here. Maybe you want to just thin it all out. So double clicking on it and clicking on bold or whatever you like, maybe light, maybe regular, but I'll just choose bold. You can choose whatever you like. Now what you can do, let's introduce a line between Poland and this tagline. So right click here and choose the line tool, and let's create a line between these. And you can hold the shift to create a straight line. Now once you create a straight line, make sure that there is some stroke. Click on the fill. We don't need any fill. Just click on the cancel button. We need some stroke of white color. Now as you increase, let's choose white color from here. And as you increase the value of the stroke width, it just doesn't change. The stroke doesn't just appear. Why it doesn't appear? Because the stroke is set to inside, which means that if you create a shape and introduce a stroke, the stroke will be in the inside. This is not a shape. This is just a line. There is no inside. So no matter how much you increase this, nothing's gonna happen. What's the solution? Click here, right? Click here, click on more options. See very carefully. Align from inside, change it to center, right? You can also change it from here, but we have other options that I wanted to show you. We have dash gap kind of structure. We can just determine dashed line 4 and 2. This creates a dashed line. If you want it, you can get it. I don't want it. So make sure you choose center and click OK. You can also choose center from here, align center. It's not written. I just wanted to show you center. So there you go. All right. Now you can go ahead and increase or decrease this to your liking. So we would go ahead and choose 24. And there we go. Now let's just adjust it. Now when it comes to typography, make sure everything is aligned. Everything must be aligned. So rulers are the way to go. If you cannot see the rulers, press Ctrl or Command R to hide it and then show it. Okay. From the ruler to left, drag a line just like this and one to the right of Poland. And by the way, once I'm zoomed in, you can hold the spacebar key and your cursor changes to a hand, and then you can move right inside of your image once you have zoomed in. There you go. Now make sure the stroke is aligned to that. It's not aligned. We need to align it just like this. And to the right, Ctrl or Command T, let's drag it a little bit to align it. We might have to zoom in. All right. So let's zoom in and let's align it. You need to be really accurate, because when you're creating advertising campaigns, especially for billboards and stuff, you need to make sure that everything is well good. When somebody's spending a lot of money on you, you need to make sure everything is just very perfect. All right. Let's just adjust it. We are using the arrow keys, and this seems to be pretty nice to me. Now, once you're satisfied with all of this, what you can do, you can also convert this into a smart object. You can keep the line, you cannot keep the line. It's totally upon you. It's your artistic choice. There we go. To get rid of the guides, to hide or bring back the guides, Control and colon. Okay. Control and colon again to bring it back in. Command and colon if you're using a Mac. Shortcut is on the screen. So there we go. That's looking nice. Now what you can do, create a group of both of these, holding the Control or Command, selecting the other one, right clicking on it and choosing Convert to Smart Object. There we go. Now anytime you want to change something, change the text, just double click on it and you can change. It's just like a layer, and then just save it. Now what is the advantage of converting this into a smart object? We have a lot of advantages. Now you can go ahead and apply an overall effect to it, overall filter to it, overall adjustment to it. You don't have to merge the layers and creating a new merge layer, which will just make things more complex for you. You don't have to go ahead and create a new layer, merge everything down in it, and then just apply some. It will just create layers and it will make your image destructive. So you don't want that to happen. This allows you to become non-destructive and be more experimental. This makes your workflow totally non-destructive and gives you the freedom to make whatever changes you like. Apply filters and distortion. Let me show you one example. So we have converted this text layer into a smart object, right? So you can go ahead and press Ctrl or Command T, right click on it and choose maybe distort. We did it in one of the previous tutorials, and you can just distort it just like this, and you won't do it, but let's say you are doing this. Then as you can see, you can change the text. And by the way, we just forgot to add the shape, the line, into the smart object. So let's go back before we created the smart object and select all of these three, and then right click, choose convert to smart object. Make sure all of, including the line, everything is inside the smart object. Now Control Command T, if you right click on it and choose distort, and even if you want to distort just like this and do something crazy just like this, you can always go ahead, double click on it, change the text, double click on Poland, change it to Holland. You can increase the, all right, and see, just crop it, just select the front image, just increase it a bit and just clear it out. Maybe once you select the front image, clear it out so that you can expand it this way. And once you're done with that, hit enter and then save it, right? Crop, file, save, and it just updates like that. You might have to make some adjustments, but you get the idea on how it's being done. Now let's go back. There we are. You can change anything you want. And also, I just wanted to show you one more interesting thing which you can do. This is not related to it, but it's typography. Let's go ahead, zoom in. And instead of this shape, we just went back, Control-Alt-Z, and create a rectangle. Right click, choose rectangle, and maybe you want to create a rectangle like that. And make sure it's filled with white. We have no stroke right here. And make sure it's selected to none. Now let's bring the rectangle just below Poland, okay? Just below Poland. Now we want the Poland text to punch a hole into this rectangle. How to do that? I've already taught you in my previous tutorial. Double click on the right hand side of the layer or right click and choose blending options to open up the layer styles dialog box. Now take down the fill opacity to 0, knock out, choose shallow. Now this knocks out a hole throughout the image, throughout the whole image. We don't want that. We just want this rectangle to be knocked out. Click OK and create a group of both of these, Poland and this rectangle, Poland and this rectangle. Pronunciation, just kind of accent. Okay, anyway, so alright, now that's something which you can do. Now at this point we think that we need to make the text a little bit thicker. So double click on the T and choose from bold, and you can choose black or maybe extra bold. Looks good. There you go. You can now just go ahead, bring it a little up. That looks fantastic also. And then create a smart object for all of this. Select the topmost layer which is related to the text and the bottommost, including the shape and everything. Just this. Everything looks good. Right click on it and convert to smart object. Now we have everything under one layer. Isn't that simplifying? Now you can go ahead and apply any adjustment or filters to all of these together. So for example, in the subject you wanted to add some filters like filter, filter gallery, and maybe some artistic effect to whole of the subject. You don't have to merge it anymore. Maybe to the background you wanted to add some more blur, or maybe add some artistic brushes or stuff, or posterize anything. You can apply it to all of that. It's easy. Maybe to the text you wanted to do something as I showed you, distort in something, maybe drop shadow. Right click on it, blending options. Maybe you want to add some drop shadow. You could have grouped it and added it, but this is more convenient. Okay, opacity and maybe the distance, just like that, and you can do stuff like that. So that's all for this video. Just a quick little recap. You can convert a bunch of layers into smart objects and still can just open up the smart objects and get every layer, every adjustment, and every filter back. Isn't that interesting? Now you would do that conversion in two situations. Number one, if your layers are getting very complex, if there are so many layers and you want to group them out, you can also group them and also convert that into a smart object. If it's getting too complex, you can convert that. Number two situation, this is important. If you want to apply a collective filter on all of those, okay, so suppose you have a subject layer, you have a hue saturation on it just like we did, you have a curves on it, maybe you have a filter on it, you have everything. In the form of a smart object, you have the subject as a smart object, and under that you have a lot of filters. It's getting complex and a lot of adjustment layers above it. It's getting really complex. And you want to apply an overall filter, including the curves, including all the effects that have been applied. There's only one way. Convert all of that, all of the layers related to the subject, into a smart object. That way, you will have the ability to apply anything non-destructively. Otherwise, you will have to create a merged layer and then apply it. That's kind of destructive and you don't want that to happen. Just remember the two situations. Number one, if it's getting too complex. Number two, if you want to apply something collectively. And also, if you want to simplify stuff, you can do that as well. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like, and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe, ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss a thing. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.